Hello and welcome to the Most Maligned Horror Podcast, a show offering critical analysis and contextualization of the horror films of the early 2000s. I am your host, Macaulay Elijah Quinn. I am a filmmaker and film critic, and on today's episode I'll be discussing with you February 2000's Uzumaki. Uzumaki is the first adaptation that we've covered on this show. It is the first time that we've covered a film that is based on another property or a property from a different medium. And I think that provides us with a really great opportunity to talk about the art of adaptation, what I believe makes a good adaptation. Because adapting any artwork, whether it be a comic book or a novel or a video game, adapting any piece of work from one medium into another it's a very, very difficult thing to do. It presents a lot of challenges that I think a lot of people don't really respect, don't really have a complete understanding of. You see this most prominently, I would say, in adaptations of video games. Video game adaptations have a reputation, not an unearned reputation, for being lesser than other types of adaptational work. Uzumaki, though, is an absolutely outstanding film, and I think represents adaptation at its best. It's a work that comes from a group of artists who clearly understand the work that they are adapting. That isn't to say that the manga has been adapted wholly literally. It has in a lot of cases. They've obviously there are story beats and there are shots from the film that are based on panels from the manga. But more than that, Uzumaki 2000 understands the core of the Uzumaki manga, the original work. It really understands what it was doing thematically. It really understands what the appeal of Junji Ito's work is in a broad sense. And it makes for a really, really compelling watch. It makes for a really fun, really engaging film that is faithful to the original material while standing on its own. I think that you could show this to any horror fan, really, and I think that they would find something to like in it, regardless of whether or not they typically read manga, or even if they, don't typically watch Japanese films or anime or Japanese sort of media. Uzumaki, the manga, is, like a lot of Junji Ito's works, a cosmic horror story, which is to say that the fear comes from unknowing. It works because of the way that it conveys humanity's powerlessness. There are moments of horror throughout the story. There are panels whose imagery evokes a fear response in the audience, but the work ultimately succeeds because of Junji Ito's ability to convey the powerlessness of humanity and our uncomprehending, our inability to fully grapple with powers greater than ourselves. Uzumaki, the film, is, I would say, more accurately described as a cosmic farce. It is a scary film. It is a horror film. I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as classifying this as a comedy film, but it is a very, very playful film. It is a film that takes a great deal of joy in showing you the bizarre, the uncanny, the absurd. You feel this in the very first moments of the film. The soundtrack I found to be really, really, playful, very, very joyful. Even it's very bouncy. It is very, very sort of evokes an almost childish sort of quality. And this is what I mean when I say that this is a film that comes from a group of filmmakers that clearly understood the work that they were adapting, that clearly understood the appeal of Junji Ito's work. Junji Ito, for those of you who are unfamiliar with his work, is a Japanese mangaka. He is a Japanese comics author who is most well known for his art style, which does a great job of capturing the uncanny. His works are very, very heavily detailed. There is a great deal of depth to his imagery. His artwork strikes a really great balance between realism and surrealism. His imagery is very, very textured, very detailed, very rendered. He's also great at telling stories in his chosen medium. He is great at using the page turn as a way of conveying, like, as a way of making these big moments of horror really hit home. His panels will frequently lead you across the page in a way that builds a sense of dread, a sort of sense of foreboding in the reader, and then you will turn the page and there will be a big splash image that pays off the dread, that pays off the foreboding. I'm not a comics critic, and so I don't feel as though I am doing a great job of conveying just how extraordinary his work is. As a fan, though, as just a reader, his work does stand out. The first time that I read his work, it was extraordinary to me. It really did jump out as something wholly different than what I had read in the past. Uzumaki, the film, released in February of 2000, was a film that I had heard about because I was a fan of Junji Ito's work. It was, occasionally brought up as, there's, this adaptation. This is not the first of his works to be adapted. We will actually be covering another adaptation of his over on Take Two very shortly, an adaptation of one of his mini Tomie stories. Uzumaki, though, is often, it's considered to be Junji Ito's magnum opus. His Wikipedia page goes as far as to make that claim. I don't know if I fully agree or not. I don't think I've read quite enough of his work to make a definitive statement, but it's very clear that Uzumaki is very, very well loved and very, very highly respected by people who are into this sort of thing. The Uzumaki film, though, as I said, I had heard about it, but it doesn't receive nearly as much acclaim as the original work. And I think there's a few different reasons for that. One is that it is relatively difficult to find. I don't know if it's received a proper wide release in the West. It possibly has done, but I couldn't find it. Just giving a cursory Google. Although the film is available, you can find it if you know where to look. One of the other reasons that I believe this film is often overlooked is that it is very goofy. It is, as I said, very, very playful, almost joyful. The filmmakers are having a lot of fun portraying these images and these scenes. I, though, believe that this is actually a really, really phenomenal film. I loved it. I found this film really captivating from the jump. The moment that really brought me in, I've mentioned the music already and the way that captures the sort of playful nature of Junji Ito's work. One of the things that I find most compelling about Junji Ito as an author is the way that he takes such pride in his work, and the way that he is just so obviously gleeful when he is creating. There is an energy to his work that is, I'm going to use the word again, playful. There's almost a giddiness to his work. He is an artist who clearly is having a lot of fun with his readers. He enjoys showing you just the most bizarre, strange images that he can conjure up. And that attitude, that warmth, that care that he puts into all of his work, it comes across when you're reading it. And I think that's one thing that this film really captures. These filmmakers, too, are gleeful. They are having an absolute whale of a time putting together this film. They were obviously having a lot of fun shooting it. They had a huge amount of fun in the editing room. The editing in this film is just absolutely unreal. Some of the most creative editing that I have ever seen in a motion picture. Probably the only film that comes close that I can think of off the top of my head is the Wachowskis' Speed Racer. That too is a film that is made with a lot of love and with a lot of care. The Wachowski sisters were obviously having just a great time, shooting the film and editing and putting everything together. This was a story that they wanted to tell. And Uzumaki is a film that the filmmakers wanted to make. Every element of this film is finely tuned. There are moments which I feel your average viewer could watch and see as being really sloppy. There is a special effects moment that stands out in my mind where a woman puts out a cigarette on a wall, and they put it looks like a stock explosion effect over her stamping it out. I think a lot of people would watch that and go, oh, how cheap, or oh, why did they do that? Such an odd choice, and they would be really dismissive of it. And I actually think that it is a mark of this film's quality. I think that it goes to show that these filmmakers, they understood that this was an odd choice. I don't think they looked at this and thought, yep, that's realistic, or even, oh, that looks, conventionally good. I think that you could have done the same effect. There are other filmmakers who would have done the same effect, conveyed the same message, but in a more grounded, real, gritty sort of way. These filmmakers, though, they're not interested in realism. They are instead playing with the audience. They want you to engage with the film. They want you to be an active participant in a way that a lot of films just don't ask of their audiences. A common criticism of horror films that I have seen is that unless the scare is happening, they are perceived as being very, very boring, or very rote, very paint by numbers. Audiences will often be, just on their phone or doing something else, talking, having a conversation, and they won't actually tune into the film until those sorts of obvious markers of a scare start to show up. So, the music goes a certain way, the camera starts doing something specific, a character does something that we recognize as being a setup for a scare. Uzumaki wants you to be watching. It is a film that wants you looking at the screen, and it is doing everything in its power to keep you from looking away. I think that some people would criticize this as being sort of the filmmaker, the filmic equivalent of dangling your keys in front of a baby, just doing anything you can just to occupy. But I don't know, it really did just work for me. I'm looking at the notes that I have taken for this film, and they are the shortest that I have ever put together. And that was because I found it really hard to disengage with the film. I found it really, really difficult to look away because I was so captivated by the pace of the thing, by just the unusual choices. At every moment, the filmmakers are making the most outlandish choices possible. They are making the most unhinged decisions that you possibly could. One of my first notes was that I had expected one thing, I was anticipating one thing, and instead I am receiving something wholly unexpected. And that to me is a quality film. That is a film that should be watched, that you need to go and see. We live in a world where adaptation is the norm. There is a lot to be said about these films. There is a lot to criticize about the films themselves, but also the conditions under which they're being made, the profit margins that are driving this rise in adaptational films. There is a lot of criticism that can be leveled at the creators of, say, the Marvel films, Taika Waititi, or in any number of these other people who are contributing to the death of independent original cinema. But I think that it is worth saying that a good adaptation is a hard thing to make. It takes a lot of skill to properly adapt across mediums. The best kind of adaptation, I believe, is the ones that engage fully with the work that they're adapting, that understand in a really core way, in a really, really fundamental way, how the work that they're adapting functions, what they're saying, what the original creators were saying in the work, but also how they were saying it, how they created meaning in their medium. The filmmakers behind Uzumaki clearly understood the manga in a deep, deep way. They understood Junji Ito as a creator as well in a really profound way. They had a lot of respect for him and for what he achieved with his works. It's that duty of care that I think makes this, not makes it, but contributes to its exceptional nature. I can't stress enough that I really want you to go out and watch this film. It's not that hard to find, in all honesty. It is up on YouTube. I think there's a couple of versions of it up on YouTube, actually. And they have subtitles hard-coded in. Seek it out. Really, go and look. At least watch the trailer for the film and see if it captures you. Because this film, it doesn't get enough love. It does not get talked about It doesn't get brought up in conversation enough when people are talking about great adaptations of books or of comics. I think that'll do it for today. I think this is going to be a shorter episode than usual. When I really love something, when I really love a film, I find it in some ways a lot harder to talk about because I don't want to just gush. I don't want to just walk through the plot and just tell you every moment beat by beat what happens and why I like it. I think that you should really make up your own mind about whether or not you think this is a good film or not. That's one of the things that I am really conscious of with this show is I want for you to want to watch the films that I talk about. At the end of each episode, I want you to say, that sounds really interesting. I am now going to go out and watch this film. And so I don't want to just sit here and talk for, an hour about a film that you can watch yourself and come to your own conclusions about. So I'm going to leave this here. Perhaps we'll revisit this film sometime again in the future. In the meantime, though, I'd like to thank Janka Glonis for the use of her track Slime dripping down the walls off of the album Fun Time Party Gal. A link to that album and to their Bandcamp can be found in the episode description. If you have any comments or queries regarding the show and you want to get in touch, you can do that on Twitter at Most Maligned or via email mostmaligned@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd ask that you please consider supporting the show on Patreon, patreon.com/mostmaligned, where for just $5 a month you'll receive exclusive access to Take Two, a semi-weekly show offering critical analysis and contextualization of those films which have not made it onto the main feed. This week, if you go there, you'll find a discussion of the entirety of the Japanese Ring series, with particular attention being paid to January 2000's Ringu Zero Birthday, the fifth film in that series, fourth released theatrically. If you could please take a moment to leave a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, I would really appreciate it. Good word of mouth is so important in helping to increase this show's listenership, especially in these early days. Next week on the show, we'll be discussing February 2000's Bruiser, the forgotten George A. Romero slasher film. Until then, though, this has been the Most Maligned Horror Podcast.